Welcome to Living Fully. Each episode is a chance to talk about mental health in a way that's simple, honest, and helpful. We'll share stories, tips, and tools to help you feel supported and feel your best. I'm your host, Catherine Hertig. In today's episode, we're talking about the drive to always be achieving, the pull towards perfection, and the pressure so many of us feel to constantly perform. I sit down with counselor Lisa McIsaac to explore how these patterns show up in our lives, how they affect our mental health and relationships, and what it looks like to choose progress and self-compassion over perfection. All right. Lisa McIsaac, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always great to talk to you, Catherine.
Thank you. And today we're talking about productivity, perfectionism, how these things can kind of impact our mental health. I think a lot of us, me included, we kind of grow up with this idea that our value and that our worth, it comes from, what we achieve, our outputs. Where do you see that belief showing up most in your work with clients?
It's a great question. It shows up quite frequently. And I would say, especially in today's culture, there's a lot of pressure put on people and their performance.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of exploded. So people will often show up with issues pertaining to dissatisfaction or depression or just overall general sense of unwellness or maybe problems in their interpersonal relationships. But when you really delve down into the problem, you find out that, there's a high drive towards productivity and perfectionism. And it makes it really impossible for people to find fulfillment in their lives when they're constantly chasing and never really stopping to appreciate their accomplishments.
Mm-hmm. I know, because that's not really what we're told to do. Not like, look at all you've done. It's like, no, keep growing, keep building, keep changing,
Yeah, you're constantly striving.
Yeah. I'm thinking about what I see on social media. It's always, what can you do different to be better? Not like part of capitalism, right? Like, how can we sell you something to
make you want more?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point when you talk about social media, because when I was growing up, there was no social media.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a frame of reference for that constant comparison or that upselling, if you will, for a better lifestyle or a better look or a better product or being more accomplished. Like you had your communities and your people around you that you could compare yourself to, but for the most part, it was just different.
Yeah.
And now social media is constantly in people's faces and you're seeing what other people are doing and experiencing. And then it makes people feel like they're missing out. I guess that FOMO.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. With your clients, like what language do you hear people use that their self-worth might be tied to productivity or their work or things like that?
Well, the whole concept of not enough, right? So I feel like I'm not enough. I feel like I don't know where I'm going. That sense of not having clear goals or direction or a lack of satisfaction, lack of well-being.
Yeah, that would all be really common. I know I've definitely struggled with thoughts of that, of not being enough, not performing enough, not working hard enough.
I think most of us do nowadays. And not to belabor the whole COVID experience, but I think that magnified the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, because most of us moved to a virtual environment, and then the expectation in that environment was that we were always available and that we were always on. And
yeah, you can work anywhere.
Yeah, and I think it's unnatural for us to always be on and always be available.
Yeah, definitely. And Lisa, what does it actually cost us? So when we think that we're only as good as what we're producing, what does that cost us emotionally, mentally?
I think the cost is huge. If you fast forward to the end of your life, for example, and you think about what's on your epitaph, or if you're at the end of your life looking back, what mattered, it probably wouldn't be your productivity or your work. So what it's costing us is really appreciating the value of the meaning and purpose of our lives, and the value of our relationships, and enjoying and experiencing this thing that we call life and why we're here to begin with.
So how does burnout and anxiety kind of play into these ideas as well?
Well, in my work, I've experienced a lot of clients who have job dissatisfaction, stress at work, what they perceive as toxicity in the workplace, and burnout ultimately. And I think that is a pretty strong indicator that our work environments have changed and that people feel like they have to be high performing to be successful. And yet, no matter how much they're producing, they feel like they can't keep up and they're dissatisfied. So that constant expectation to perform, right? People feel like there's just no ceiling on that.
You mentioned something about this in the beginning, but how does this kind of mindset, how can it potentially impact someone's relationships with friends, partners, family?
I mean, if you have an ideal about perfectionism and you think that that's the expectation that you set for yourself, that gets projected onto other people in your relationships. So if people see you performing and thinking that excellence is the only thing that's good enough, then how do people around you feel, right? Like how do they measure their own performance, and especially if they don't value those same things? So you can inadvertently be projecting that onto the people around you, that your expectation is for them to excel at everything, and anything less than that is not enough.
Right. Well, and it can be like a mindset and a behavior that you take not only into your professional life, but relationships as well. Like I definitely struggled with that, not just the beginning of my relationship with my husband, but like well into it, where it's like, yeah, this feeling of like, I need to be perfect, you know? And yeah, that can put strains on things.
Well, and the reality is most of us who strive for a higher education have perfectionist tendencies.
Yeah.
Because there is something that indicates a level of high productivity and performance just by the very nature and design of that. When I was in my master's program, I had a professor who worked with the Canadian Olympic team, and she brought in a presentation on perfectionism that we were all delighted to see, but at the time was really about us, and that was the purpose in her delivering it to us.
Yeah.
Because we all had an inclination, I guess, towards perfectionism. And one of the things that she taught us and that I took away from that, which I will probably never forget, she said, what's the difference between somebody striving for perfectionism, like a 4.0 GPA, versus somebody who might just be getting through their program with a 3.0, let's say, which is still pretty good.
Yeah.
And went on to explain to us was the difference is we come out with the same credentials, with the same employment opportunities, except the person with the lower GPA probably had more fun while they were attending school, and those of us that were perfectionists were probably stressed out.
Yeah.
And she wasn't wrong. Nobody ever asks you what your GPA was, but
I know, hey? Yeah.
So it really is about mindset.
And so how do we go about shifting this? If this is resonating to someone that's listening, like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely a perfectionist. I need to work this hard. I need to perform this much in order to feel like a good person, or like that I'm worthy. What reflections do we need to have about ourselves? Like, what's the process?
Well, I think it's helpful to unpack where we learn those value systems to begin with.
Yeah.
Sometimes children learn that because their parents are high performing and have tendencies toward perfectionism. So they may have learned in their childhood that productivity was, equaled praise. So unpacking some of that and recognizing, well, what was missing, right? What didn't you get, or what do you wish that you had more of? Because if a person can identify some of those things, then they can start creating opportunities for that in their own life, or to show up differently, right? And not repeat those patterns. I think the other important thing to focus on is progress over perfection.
Right.
So are you making progress? And what does progress look like? Because sometimes it's maybe about the growth edge, like how are you growing? Whereas performing isn't always about growth, right? Like you can have high productivity, but maybe you're not growing. You're just kind of staying the same.
Yeah.
And something I often talk to my clients about is about celebrating accomplishments, right? So what did you do today? What did you accomplish today? And what did you celebrate today?
And focusing more on that instead of what you haven't. Yeah.
That's right. So being in the moment, right? So if you're building a house, you could celebrate the foundation, right? And the fact that you're making progress and moving towards that goal versus waiting until, you have the full product to be able to fully enjoy it.
I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, so I apologize if this is repetitive for anyone. So I got into running a few years ago, and it's honestly taught me so many things about mental health. And when you were talking about progress over perfection, that really resonated. There are so many days where it's that was a really bad run. That was really hard. I was a lot slower than I wanted to be. But it doesn't take away from the fact that still building my stamina. It's still an improvement. It's still it's just one piece of the whole training plan kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about showing up.
Yeah.
Or celebrating what happened and not focusing on what didn't happen, right? So I ran today, not I didn't run at my best today. That perception and that focus really makes a difference. Also, what happens when people focus on excellence and perfectionism, the target keeps moving.
Right.
So the bar keeps moving. If you go back to your running example, maybe you're timing your run and your distance. And if you don't have a perfect day, you could beat yourself up over the time or the distance instead of celebrating the fact that you got out and you did it. And maybe you were a little off that day. Maybe you were a little tired. Maybe you were sick and you did it anyway. That's amazing. But also, if you're hitting your time and you're hitting your distance, you're probably going to want to reduce your time and increase your distance.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what perfectionism does. The bar keeps moving. And what happens when the bar keeps moving is that our satisfaction doesn't improve or increase, right? Our expectation just keeps increasing, and that creates neuroticism. It just makes people neurotic because you're never satisfied with the outcome. You just keep moving the target.
Yeah. So we can do the work on ourselves to try to have a different mindset and to focus more on the whole journey and not just these outcomes. But, what if we're surrounded by others who really value that perfectionism? I'm thinking if you have a boss that is, really drills that into you, that it's just more, better, or, a partner who thinks that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. It's challenging and hard because we don't always have control over our environment.
Yeah, we can control what we do and how we react. We can't control anyone else.
And that really contributes to stress and burnout, in people's careers nowadays, because there does seem to be a stronger emphasis on productivity, and people can't always control the demands and the expectations that are outside of them, whether it's your boss or your partner. But some of the things that people can do is they can set their own expectations for themselves. They can be a stronger self-advocate. They can do research. They can present to their boss, their rationale for their boundaries or limitations or behaviors. You have to ask yourself, is the cost of doing business too high? Is this the right place for me? Is this the right partnership? And those are hard questions. At the end of the day, we have to do what's right for us. And those things can be hard to navigate, but there's always options.
So what are some practices or tools or homework that you give clients who might be dealing with some of the things that we've been talking about?
It really depends on the person in front of me. Oftentimes I will say to people, when was the last time you made a mental inventory of the things that you've accomplished in your life? And usually the answer is, I've never done that.
Yeah.
So I will often ask people to make a mental inventory of the things that they've accomplished in their life. Like, what are the things that you do well? What are the things that you have accomplished? When is the last time you celebrated those successes? How can we set you up for success so that you can take time every day to think about your intentions for that day and to celebrate your successes? If you have priorities, write them down. Write the most important priorities in bigger letters. And when you accomplish those goals or those tasks, scratch them off. And always do the most important things first because they're in the bigger letters. So you'll see that, and that'll be what stands out is what you accomplished and not what you didn't accomplish.
Love a checklist, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's always a good idea, too, to scratch off today's list, what you didn't do today, and put it on tomorrow's list. It's a visual. So then if you scratch it off, it's not going to be standing out and glaring at you.
Yeah.
You know, that you didn't accomplish it, you're going to scratch it off and put it on tomorrow's list. So it's not that you didn't accomplish it today, it's that it's now tomorrow's work.
Yeah, I like that. So for someone who is, a high performer, driven that way, I'm assuming like the idea of rest can be difficult. It feels unproductive. There can be a sense of guilt around that. Can you talk a bit about this?
Yeah. So retraining yourself to learn how to relax. Like learn how to slow down, find ways to have balance in your life and structure your time differently. I've heard people say, oh, I don't know how to slow down. I don't know how to stop moving. And that is relatable to me. I mean, my own kids have said that to me, that I'm more active or more productive than they are. And when they say that, that's kind of a warning sign to me. It's like, oh, I need to reevaluate. I need to take a look at my own life. So asking yourself, how can I insert self-care?
Okay.
When am I taking moments for quiet reflection? How can I slow down? What are some things that I can do? Can I go for a walk, even 20 minutes without my phone, without music, without a podcast? Just listen to the natural sounds around me, feel the sun and be present.
I'm definitely trying to be more intentional with that. Like, I find, I always have to be consuming something, like a podcast on the way to work, or even if I'm just doing housework, I'm having like a show on in the background. But having those intentional moments of really disconnecting and not being fed anything in the ears, and just listening to what's around you. Yeah, I think that's important.
Well, it's really easy to become habitual. Yeah. And I think we've become habitual with technology. So it's important to go back and create habits where we're just mindful and present, focused, and I don't mean focused in the productivity way. I mean kind of focused on what's going on in our body.
Yeah.
What do we need right now? If you need sleep, sleep. Get outside. Disconnect from your phone. Practice being mindful. Practice paying attention to your own body's noises and sounds, right? And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean like audible sounds. I just mean, whatever it is that you intuitively sense and feel that you need.
Yeah.
And being connected to other people, making time for other people and making sure that you don't have any distraction, or thinking, when's the last time that I did an act of self-care or had a massage or did something that I really value that has no external value, just something intrinsic to you.
Lisa, does self-compassion play into this at all? Like as you're working on your perfectionism, if you're practicing self-compassion, would it kind of feel like lowering your standards? Does that make sense?
I would say 100% self-compassion comes into play.
Yeah.
For most people who are perfectionists, I think they lack self-compassion. They lack the ability to practice self-care and to be kind to themselves. I mean, in a sense, it's almost self-abusive to be constantly grinding and never giving yourself any relief or reprieve. So if you think about somebody who is very dictatorial or demanding or militant, for example, it doesn't paint a pretty picture in your head about that. But that's almost what you're like in relationship with yourself, right? Like you're just constantly placing unrealistic demands on yourself without any reprieve. So there in of itself, that is a lack of self-compassion.
Mm-hmm. In your work with clients around these topics, after they've worked with you, what have they noticed? Like what's changed? What has improved for them? How do they approach things differently?
The biggest shift would be perhaps learning how to be softer and gentler with themselves. So more self-accepting, increased awareness around some of the values and belief systems that may have been instilled in them without them really being conscientious about it. So doing without really being aware of how those belief systems came into play. I think that there's a degree of self-awareness and insight that needs to happen for people to be able to shift their perspective.
Right.
And to want different things for themselves and see the value in it, because nobody's really going to buy into anything if they don't see the value in it. So you have to see the value in happiness and in choosing happiness and choosing balance and understanding that your performance and productivity isn't the be-all, end-all in your life. It's not everything.
I would imagine that if that belief, though, is so ingrained that it can be difficult. It can be quite the challenge to make that change, to shift to a more balanced view.
It's like anything in life, really. I mean, when you want to adopt a change, you have to have a sense, a desire and a willingness to do things differently. So when you can draw the connection between a person's lack of fulfillment and their current behavior, then it's easy to start shifting that perspective and say, well, what would be different in your life if this were to change?
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of the ways that I will do that with people is instead of belaboring, what they're currently doing, is I might shift the focus to say, hey, what would your life look like 5 years from now if nothing changed? If you kept doing what you're doing, how do you see your life 5 years from now? And I mean, I think that's pretty evident for most people. If they don't do anything different and they're not happy, they're probably not going to be happy 5 years from now. It's probably going to be worse, right?
Yeah.
And then if you ask them, what would your life look like 5 years from now if you were happy and if things were going really well, and what would be different? And initially, when you start those conversations with people, they're a little bit apprehensive and not entirely sure. But what you start unpacking is not doing what they're currently doing, and it starts opening the door on a new perspective and incorporating small changes into their life that can start movement towards that. And that usually means something that's more fulfilling and something that can generate happiness.
Yeah. What tends to come up for people when, someone who is a perfectionist, high achiever, what tends to come up when structure is, suddenly removed? That could be like, job loss or injury or retirement, things like that.
Fear would be the first thing that would probably pop up. Fear of failure, not knowing. If you think about perfectionism, the word omnipotence comes to mind, being all-knowing. You feel like you always have to have the answer. You always need to know what's going to happen.
Yeah, prepared for
or what
everything.
the outcome's going to be. So if all of a sudden you don't know, there's that fear, right? Fear of not knowing, fear of failure. It's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to lean into that and to discover, what potential options could be there that you hadn't considered before.
And yeah, that's the difference, hey? It's the mindset and kind of how we choose to think about situations.
Yeah. exactly.
If productivity isn't the measure of worth, what can success look like instead?
I think about holistically the bigger picture. Again, if you fast forward to the end of your life, looking back, what do you think most people would value at the end of their life? Is it their work and their career, or is it their relationships, the connections that they have with people? Is it the contributions that they made to other people's lives or to their community? Like, what is it that a person would really value at the end of their life? Have conversations with older people. Ask them what they wish they had done differently.
Yeah.
And
I doubt many of them are going to say that they wish they worked harder.
No.
Yeah.
No. And I think as you get older, and as people get older, they tend to put less pressure on productivity, and they tend to be more satisfied and more at ease. And for some of those reasons, they start realizing that where they put their emphasis and their energy was misplaced.
So if someone's listening to this right now and they're kind of realizing that their worth, that they really are tying it to what they put out there, to their productivity, to what they achieve, what's one small thing that you'd suggest they start with right now?
I think turning inward and thinking, how do you want to show up, right? Like, what kind of person do you want to be? And how do you want to be remembered? Is your decision-making and your performance actually congruent with how you want to move through the world? Are you leaving the footprint that you want to leave? And do you like who you see in the mirror?
Yeah. Hard reflections, but important for sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Oh, thanks, Catherine. It's always a pleasure.
You've been listening to Living Fully, a Calgary Counseling Centre podcast. Thank you for tuning in. This episode was produced by Nick Here, Louisa Campos, Manuel Montano, Jenna Forbes, and by me, Catherine Hertig. A special thanks to Lisa McIsaac. Tune in to our next episode on March 10th. We'll be talking to counselor Joel Zimmerman about how laughter and having a sense of humor actually support our mental health.
Well, it's a both and perspective.
Yeah.
This both sucks and we can talk about it, or we can be okay about it. And one of the ways that we can talk about it, like I say, is through humor, seeing the levity in a difficult situation, seeing the irony, seeing the contradiction. And that's I think one of the things that humor does is, it reframes without denying. It allows us to have both be in two places at once. It provides the ability to have some control.
To stay up to date on our latest episodes, be sure to subscribe. We're available in your favorite podcast app. Living Fully is a production of Calgary Counseling Centre and recorded in Calgary on Treaty 7 territory. Living Fully podcast is not a substitute or alternative for professional care or treatment. Calgary Counseling Centre and Counseling Alberta provide effective counseling to anyone in Alberta with no waitlist and no financial barriers. Find us online at calgarycounseling.com and counselingalberta.com. For help across Canada and the United States, call 211. If you are outside of Canada and the US, seek help from your general medical practitioner.